Hello class, Mike Harris here. This is my attending video number 4. This is where we put our plot line forward. Just to remind you that my scripture portion is the feeding of the 5,000. And I don't need to elaborate on that story, you all know it very well. And this has been quite an interesting exercise for me. I'm going to show you my plot line, but I'm not going to hold it up like Dr. Jackson did because I'm going to need to refer to it. But you'll see there on the left, the first thing I write is happy disciples alone with Jesus. That's where our story begins. There's many a time that the disciples were happy and were alone with Jesus, but this was a special time because they just got back from being sent out, being empowered. They were healing people, they were preaching, and they were excited telling Jesus about the things they did. So they kind of withdrew, and the idea was they were to be alone. However, the plot starts to build up a little bit with my next little circle there. And it says, a crowd follow them, I'm trying to read it backwards, to their remote place. So they're in this remote place, and the crowd hears that Jesus is there, and so the crowd follows them. So we can see there the beginnings of a bit of an issue. There's also another thing that's going on. The day's fantastic. They're having a great day. I mean, the disciples are not complaining at all at this juncture. They're just thrilled to be there, watching Jesus healing people, seeing people, or listening to him preach. That Greek wisdom, oh my gosh, the incredible wisdom he must have brought with him. So I'm sure it was a great time, but the second problem that was going on was they were losing track of time. The day was getting away from them. And so as you can see there, through my but one here, is where they lose the track of time. It brings us to our big significant issue, which is hunger. Yeah, they were hungry. And so of course that caused something of a panic from the disciples. They didn't know what to do. I had this vision of them huddling around each other. So, oh, it's getting hungry. Does Jesus know what time it is? You know, we're in a remote place. There's nothing around. I mean, this is what was going on. So that hunger was causing this sort of panic, this consternation amongst the disciples. It doesn't really say what the crowd's reaction was, but I'm sure if they felt hungry, they were saying it. So hunger was at the center of everything. So how to resolve the issue of the hunger? Well, the two things that I see in the way of resolution, there are two things I think. One is the outside source, if you will. And that, of course, Jesus had a plan. It's very clear that Jesus had a plan. He said to the disciples, you feed them. That was the beginning of Jesus' plan. And that's why I've got a second portion here as to the resolution. And we see there that it says, the disciples presented all that they had. Now it's an important thing, because I have lamented in some ways the disciples and their lack of faith, and they certainly displayed that because they panicked a bit. And when Jesus said, you feed them, they were, what are we going to do? We haven't got enough food to feed everybody. But at the same time, they did at least present something to him. It was an absurd something. So why on earth would they present something ridiculously absurd unless they believed something greater would happen? So I think that's part of the resolution as well, that they actually presented something to Jesus. But the overall thing was that Jesus had a plan. And that plan was to use those loaves and fishes to give thanks, to break that bread, and then feed everybody. I mean, it's the miracle we know so well. And so at the very end, the new normal, if you will, is the disciples had an enormously enhanced faith in Jesus. They already had faith. The beginning of the story shows us that, because they just got back and they were doing the work of Jesus, or work of God, and they were very excited to tell him about it. So they already had faith in Jesus. But at the end of this story, the faith was enormous. And I think that's also echoed by the fact that this is just one of the two miracles that's given in all four Gospels. It must have had a significant impact on anyone that heard the story, and certainly anyone that witnessed the story, and those disciples who recorded the story as eyewitnesses. So that's my plot line for feeding the 5,000. I hope it makes good sense to you, and I look forward to seeing your attending videos. God bless you, friends.